Well, today is an incredible day. It's one of my favorite times of the year when we get to stop our normal routine and focus and lift our eyes as Jesus challenged his disciples to do. Look at the harvest. He said, "It is white, it's ready, it's ripe," and we get to be involved in that. The great thing about Faith Promise is that it allows us who have not been called to be missionaries, who have not been called to go to a foreign land, it allows us to partner together with those that have been called. So I'm going to, this morning, we'll see what happens. My changer is being stubborn. I'm not talking about my wife, I'm talking about this thing. And so, because I have... And the reason that matters is I'm going to feed a lot of information to you this morning, and I think it's pertinent for us to understand on a global scale. And here's where we're going to start. We're going to pick up a little bit with what we talked about last week, but here's where we're going to start. More than 70 million Christians have been martyred in the course of history. More than half of those were martyred in the 20th century under communist and fascist dictators. Let the numbers sink in for you. They're incredible. In the 21st century, roughly 100,000 to 160,000 Christians were killed each year. Now, please understand, this is just because they were Christians. It's just because many of them left the faith in which they were raised, be it Muslim or Hindu or whatever it may have been, and they embraced Jesus Christ, and it cost them their lives. Roughly 1,093,000 Christians were martyred worldwide between 2000 and 2018 or 10. 1,093,000. See, here's part of our problem. We sit in our comfort. We sit in our affluent, and I know that most of the people that I talk to don't consider themselves to be affluent, but trust me, you are. Right? You are better off than about 93% of the world right now, okay? And it's so easy, tragically, for us to sit in what it is that God has blessed us with and not think about those that die every day just because they're a Christian. Right? And unless we intentionally take a look at them, unless we intentionally walk down that road, they never come to mind. Right? But I felt like it was necessary for us to do this journey this morning together so that we had a better picture of what's going on in just the modern global persecution that's taking place. 322 Christians are killed for their faith every month that you and I are alive. 322 every month. 214 churches and Christian properties are destroyed every month. All right? 772 forms of violence, beatings, kidnappings, rape, arrest, and so on, are committed against Christians every single month of the year. Now listen, these statistics all stack themselves one on top of the other. Right? So when you add all those together, even paints even a darker picture. Christians in more than 60 countries face persecution from their governments or neighbors because of their faith. Please, let me share something with you, and I don't want it to come. We have seen, if you followed it in recent weeks and months, there have been pastors here in America that have been arrested and put in jail for reading their Bible on the sidewalk in public. Right? And as crazy as that sounds to you and I, we look at that and we call, oh, they're being martyred. Not really. Okay? We're so out of touch with the level of martyring that goes on in our world that we consider that. Right? And I mean, I understand it should not happen. It should not happen in America that you can be arrested for praying publicly on a street corner. But it doesn't compare with the fact that so many places, over 60 nations in this world, that if you accept Jesus Christ, you're not just going to be arrested. You're probably going to be either in prison or going to be put to death. It's at a whole different level than what you and I are accustomed to. All right? At least 7,100 Christians were killed for faith-related reasons in 2020, up at least 4,344 from 19. It continues to rise at a rapid rate in our world. If you've been watching the news, we talked about Iran last week, and if you've been watching that, then you know that they are being killed daily in Iran for being Christians. They're being martyred on a massive scale. Okay? But it's not just Iran. Look at here are the 10 countries where Christians face the most extreme persecution. All right? And this is the order. Number 1 is North Korea. If you are found out to be a Christian in North Korea, you won't go to prison. You won't be ostracized from your family. You will immediately be put to death. There is no trial. There is nothing. You will die for that. And yet there are many who are doing it. All right? Then you go down the line. You have Somalia and Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sudan, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Yemen, and Eritrea. All of these, and these are just the top 10. There's 60 of them all together. These are the top 10 where persecution takes place on an ongoing basis simply because someone's a Christian. Okay? And so it's even more pronounced. Think about this. It's even more pronounced when we begin to look at these same nations and are baffled by the statistics of how many people are coming to know Jesus Christ, even in the middle of persecution. If you knew, think about this, if you knew this morning that you would get up and get dressed and go in your car and come to church here, and by doing that, before you could enter the door, you would be arrested and taken to prison, I wonder how many of you would think twice about whether you were coming today. In most of these countries we're talking about, they know, it's not a surprise, they know if they accept Jesus as their Savior, they are going to be persecuted. Their family is likely to be killed, they are likely to be put in prison and or murdered, and yet they do it anyway. Okay? So in the midst of all of this persecution, there's an enormous amount of evangelism taking place. So let me put this on a scale that hopefully we can understand. All right? And especially within the Muslim community right now, all across the Middle East and other places of the world, the gospel is exploding before us. All right? Before the Islamic Revolution, that we talked about briefly last week, there are approximately 500 believers with Muslim backgrounds in Iran. Today, there are more than 1 million Christian believers who have converted from Islam to Jesus Christ. Even knowing the cost. Right? And there's still, to this day right now, with all the trouble that's going on there, right, there's still, conversion is taking place on a rapid scale there. Right? Step out of the Muslim thing for just a minute. Take a look at China. Right? All the Christian churches that exist in China are underground churches. There's not a church on the street corner that you can all go to Sunday morning. They all meet in somebody's bedroom. They meet in somebody's basement. They meet in old apartments that have been abandoned. They meet anywhere they can in secret. And yet there is roughly, and many predict that it's a lot higher than this, there are over 100 million Christians in China today. So in spite of the persecution, God is still doing an extraordinary work around the world. And here's the one, I love this one. All right? Indonesia, one of the highest percentage of Muslims in the entire world. Look at this. The campaign manager there in Indonesia stated that 2 million Muslim converts to Christianity every year in that country. And he added, now watch, he added that Indonesia would come to be a predominantly Muslim nation, or would cease to be, a Muslim nation by 2035. If they continue having converts at the rate they're doing right now, by 2035 they will no longer be predominantly a Muslim nation. In the midst of hardships, in the midst of all the destruction that could come their way, they choose Jesus Christ. I'm telling you, God is at work in places around this world that would baffle us. All right? In that whole area, that whole Middle East Muslim countries that comprise what is known as the Middle East North African scenario there, which has been predominantly Muslim for decades and longer. The countries there are estimated now 10 to 15 million Christians. God's up to something. Yeah. And the problem is we don't always see it. We don't always make ourselves aware of what it is that God is doing. So let me do this. I want to put us as Nazarenes, let's put us right dead center in the middle of this. Right? Because that's where we are. Right? I've told you this before, and I'll tell you again, not just because it's true, but because I like it. Right? The Church of the Nazarene has more missionaries per capita than any denomination in the entire world. From the very day we became a denomination in Pilot Point, Texas, back in the early 1910, 1908, somewhere in there, the very thing that formed our foundation, we would be a missional people. And we began sending missionaries from that point and have continued to do so right up until today. Listen, so watch. I'm going to outline for you the role that we play within that context, all right? So, 163 world areas that we are in, this is just the Nazarene Church. There are multiple organizations all over the world that send out missionaries, all right? This is just our statistics right now. All right, we are in 163 world areas. Right? Add to that, and I believe the number today, I tried to look it up yesterday to make sure I could verify it. It's a very difficult number to find. But I believe the number is 17. There are 17 additional world areas that we are in that we are not allowed to publicly state that we are in. They are there doing the work of the gospel under the guise of something else. Many of them go as teachers in a school system. Many of them go as a government worker on hire. But their mission is to bring men and women to Jesus Christ. And if we were to reveal who they are and where they are, they in all likelihood would be arrested and or put to death. A number of years ago, we had a lady who came here and spoke to us. Her daughter went to China and began working underground with missions. She was there as a school teacher, and she began forming an underground Bible study. And they met in apartments and secret places. And she went over to visit her daughter once. She never came home. She comes home and does deputation work to raise funds to go back. Right? She's over there today, over in China, doing underneath the surface, right, the spreading of the gospel. 163 world areas that we do that in. We have 737 missionaries. Right? And we had, in addition to that, 11,267 mission volunteers. That's what she would fit into that category, all right? As a mission volunteer. I'll pay my own way. I'll go. All right, you train me. I'll be what you need to be and do in that area. And there are 30,712 churches that we have. We have there are 2.57 million members. There are 5 graduate seminaries, 31 undergrad Bible college and theological colleges that we have established. There are 14 liberal arts institutions. There are 2 nurses training colleges. There are 60 medical clinics, hospitals, and thousands of compassionate ministry centers, all right, with over 51,839 students. As we are in this place this morning, there are literally thousands upon thousands being trained around the world in Nazarene colleges, seminaries, nursing stations, and on it goes in order to minister and affect those numbers that we talked about earlier, where God's doing extraordinary things all over the world within that context. But it goes on, all right? We support 337 retired missionaries. That number obviously changes every year as new ones become retired and the older ones pass on to go be with Jesus. Right? And part of what we do with Faith Promise is we help underwrite them. Now, here's in addition to this. As I said, we have had Nazarene missions from the day we became a denomination. But a number of years ago, a man named Bill Bright, who started a thing called Youth for Christ across different universities all over the country, And in his mind, he started thinking about another way to reach beyond those universities. How can we reach into a world, all right, and share them with Jesus? And he came up with the idea called the Jesus film. It's a simple film about Jesus, about his life, about his death, about his resurrection. His salvation has a salvation story in it. But he ran into a major problem. He said, I do not have the organization necessary to take this literally globally. It doesn't happen. Right? So he came to the Nazarene church, presented it to them, and said, would you be willing to help us? And they said, yes, we would. And ever since then, we have been working with the Jesus film literally around the world. Now I want you to watch the effect that this has had, and continues to have. All right, there are 681 teams that go literally all. Here's the good thing: you and I live in an enormous gifted time. Right? We are set up. Now they can go in the middle of a jungle that has never seen electricity in their entire life. And they could set up a sheet, hang it from a tree, open up a projector and get solar on it and show a video. They don't need electricity and don't need a generator. So the places where they can do this are just astronomical. And so they show it under, more likely than not, the Jesus film, if it's shown today, will be under a shade tree somewhere in a jungle. Right? Not downtown someplace at a theater. Right? 681 teams that go. All right, 66,308,611 evangelistic contacts. That's the number of people that have seen that Jesus film since they began distribution with all those teams around the world. Now watch, it gets better. All right. Out of those 66 million, 12,410,699 have made decisions for Jesus Christ. To further, people say, well, yeah, they made a decision today and gone tomorrow. But watch, all right? Here they are. Out of that 12 million, 5,103,628, all right, began initial discipleship follow-ups. In other words, they said, we don't want to just believe, teach us. Teach us what it means to be a disciple so that we can go and do what you have done for us. Right? 5 million of them. And it continues to grow every day. They have established 41,252 preaching points. In our better culture, we would call them churches, but they're really not. Preaching points in the mission field means that I have a tree that everybody's going to come to, and we're going to sit under that, and we're going to sing to Jesus, and we're going to talk about the Bible and the Word of God. That's a preaching point, right? Because we meet under the same tree every week. Okay, it becomes a preaching point. So as a result of Jesus film, 41,252 of those. All right, think about this: every 43 seconds. Someone makes a decision for Christ after viewing the Jesus film. If you take that concept into mind, it's not hard now for me to imagine why there are 100 million believers in one place and 40 million in another place and 40 million. It's every 43 seconds. Every 43 seconds. So how is all this possible? I mean, that's a lot going on for one denomination to be a part of. How is all that possible? I'm going to break it down for you this morning. But listen, all of that we've just discussed, all of that is made possible because of a concept called faith promise. Right? Which means that you and I promise by faith to God, I will give this much in mission work this year. I can't go to Africa. I can't go to Indonesia. God hasn't called me to be anywhere, but He has blessed me. All right? And by faith, I pledge. Listen, faith promise doesn't fit neatly into my budget, or it shouldn't. If it fits neatly into my budget without upsetting too many things, it's not really a faith promise, is it? Just a budget promise. Right? It's just a bill at that point. Right? It's a faith promise. Lord, I believe this year you are going to challenge me to make a difference in the world on a global scale, because you haven't called me to go. You haven't challenged me to leave everything behind and be there in person. But those ones that you sent, I need to make sure I support them, not just with my prayers. Now watch, I want you to watch this breakdown. Here's what faith promise just in the Nazarene church does, all right? We've raised $38.5 million in World Evangelism Fund last year. That's through faith promise, all right? Also, we raised $27.3 million in approved mission specials. This is throughout the entire denomination now. All right. In addition to that, the World Evangelism overpayment, $1.1 million. Let me tell you what that is. we have a percentage. Every church, every Nazarene church has a percentage that we call, I hate the word, well, we can change it. We call them budgets. We'll call them apportionments today, okay? Makes me feel better. And a certain percentage of what we bring in for world evangelism funds and stuff has to go there. And in 1999, it was a layman from Texas challenged the denominational leaders and said, there are many churches that either do or would like to overpay their world evangelism fund. What if we took all the overpay amount and used it to start new churches? Used it to start new works in a new world, in a new nation somewhere. And it caught on. Last year, we raised $1.1 million to be used to start new missional work somewhere in the world. And as a result of that, over the years since 1999, it has allowed us to enter into 60 world areas that we were not previously in because people overpaid what they had committed to. Let's go on. All right. We raised $481,000 for missionary health care. We don't think about the health care concept for missions, but you know what? They get sick too. Right? They have health issues too. In fact, given where some of them are ministering, they may have more health issues than you and I have. Right? And so that's a vital part of that. We go on. World Mission Broadcasting. This is one of my favorite. We raised $395,000. All right. There are countries in the world that will not allow us to go in as missionaries. They simply do not tolerate the Christian gospel. But what they can't stop is we can set up a broadcasting place on this side of the border and beam the gospel via radio into their nation. We do that. We raise $395,000 and we beam it into 72 countries in 34 different languages, and there's over 140 programs that we broadcast on an annual basis. See, when we do this, look at the difference that we're making in the world when we give. All right, it goes on. All right, with $2.1 million in deputation offerings. For those of you that may not know what that is, when missionaries come back to stateside for a period of time, they do what's called deputation work. They go from church to church to church and explaining God's call, what they're doing, what's happening, and so forth. And we give them love offerings. All right, those are deputation offerings. We raised $2.1 million in deputation offerings last year. We raised $2.6 million in alabaster offerings last year as a denomination. The alabaster offerings that we do, forgive me, we do them every February and every September. But because of the mental breakdown of the leadership in this church, we forgot to do it this February. So you need to make sure you take 2 boxes with you, because we're going to double up come September. Just warning you ahead of time, okay? And what makes alabaster, listen, think about alabaster goes to help build clinics and houses and all kind of things on the mission field. All right, to help those missionaries do what it is that they do. All right. In addition to that, Compassionate Ministries, which you have been a part of in multiple ways. All right, $9.5 million, and we have sent out 787 work and witness teams. If you have never been on a work and witness team, I want to challenge you. Come and see me. I can make arrangements for you to go somewhere. It is a life-altering experience. I'm telling you now. And don't put it off. Don't think, well, I can't afford it. I'll get you the money. All right? I'll pay your way if you want to go. Well, I'm not sure I can afford the time off. Do you realize that most, not all, most of your employers, if you explain to them what it is that you're doing, will give you a week off to go and do something like this? Okay? We go to, literally, we send work and witness teams all over America. All over the world. I had the privilege a number of years ago of being the very first work and witness team to ever go into the nation of Cuba. They invited us. It's a long story. I don't have time to tell all of it to you this morning. It was life-altering for me to be a part of that God is doing and working in those ways. They make a difference. Listen, when you package all this together, can you realize the impact that we are having on a global scale? And you and I get to be a part of it. I feel a little bit like that commercial that used to be on with the hamburger helper, and the little girl will always say, "And I helped." Yeah, that's what God's doing something extraordinary, and I get to help. Okay? God has challenged me to help. When we participate in Faith Promise, we are volunteering to be involved in the life of every believer around the world. And I have this notion. I cannot support this biblically. I still believe it's true. I believe when I get to heaven someday, there are going to be thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people that will come to me and shake my hand and thank me for giving to the Faith Promise and supporting missions around the world, because that's why they're in heaven. I don't know them, but they're going to find us. I believe they are. Because I don't think we understand completely the impact that we're having here. Let me do this. A number of years ago, I had someone hand me a book and challenged me to read it. It was a book called The Insanity of God. Now, I have to confess to you that when I looked at the title, I wasn't all that enthused about reading it. I could for the life of me figure out what it was and why. So I set it on a shelf. It took a long time for me to go back and read it. And once I began to read it, I began to understand it better. It's the story of a husband and wife team. His name is Nick and hers is Ruth Ripken. They lived in rural Kentucky. They were called to be missionaries, but not to just any area of the world to do mission work. They went to some of the darkest, most difficult areas of the world that most people would not go to. They went on purpose. They went to Somalia. After 6 years experiencing life where it looked like God had turned his back completely away and remained clueless about the tragedies of life that were going on there, they began to ask questions to each other. Does the gospel work anywhere when it is really a hard, dark place? It sure didn't look like it in 6 years in Somalia. And how does faith survive, let alone flourish, in a place like the Middle East? How could God truly overcome such a level of evil and adversity? And how in the midst of all that, they ask, do you maintain hope with so much darkness around you every single day? And how does anyone live an abundant, victorious Christian life in the world's toughest, darkest places? Questions they grappled with, wondering what their future held. Would they go back to the mission field or not? And then they received the news that their son, who had been on the mission field in Somalia with them, contracted a disease and died. He's an early teenager. They wrestled with what to do with their future. And eventually they volunteered for work, and not just any work, but in the darkest, most difficult places in the world. And that book, The Insanity of God, is their story, or rather it's the testimonies of believers that they met and ministered to in those dark areas of the world. I would challenge you, if you don't already have a copy of that book, to find one. They're available on Amazon. Don't let the title throw you. It is a moving work of what God has done and still continues to do through those two people. I could tell you a lot of the stories that are in that book, but just briefly, let me give you two of them. When they first went to Somalia, Nick began a Bible study, again, hiding in dark places, in buildings that had been blown out by bombs, where no one would think to look for them. And he began to work with one, and eventually two, and eventually three, and eventually four Christian leaders. He discipled them privately, day after day after day. And just when it seemed that they were ready to go out and branch onto their own, He met with them one more time in a blown-out building with the middle of nothing but debris. They met for instructions on what they were to do and how to go forward. And as they closed up their time together, they had communion. Within 4 weeks, all 4 of them had been put to death. Dark, dark places that you and I don't think about, can't really comprehend. I think a few years ago, I told you the story of another of his gentlemen that's mentioned in the book. I want to share it with you again. His name was Dmitri. This took place after they moved their ministry to Russia. And he met Dmitri and began teaching him the Bible. And Dmitri eventually began sharing the Bible with his 2 sons. They had Sunday school together, just a father and 2 sons doing Sunday school. But before long, others asked to join in. And before long, they were meeting with more than 100 people in a bombed-out building once a week, sharing the gospel, teaching. And one day while they were meeting, the KGB showed up. They arrested Dmitri, took him to the worst prison that there is in the nation of Russia, 1,000 miles from his home, 4,000 prisoners pressed into an area that wouldn't hold more than 2,000. The very first day that he was incarcerated, in the morning he awoke, he stood up and walked out to the bars that engulfed his cell, and at the top of his voice he began to sing a praise song to God. And they laughed at him and they jeered. And every single morning he stood and he sang the same song every morning. They beat him. Other prisoners made fun of him. They threw things at him. But every day, Dmitri would stand and sing his praise song to God. For 15 years, he did that. And one day the guards showed up, entered his cell, and they shackled him, his feet and his hands. They led him out of his cell and started down the pathway to his execution. As they journeyed down the edge of the cells, they heard a noise that they were not accustomed to hearing. So they stopped, turned around, and what they heard were the voices of 4,000 men standing by their doors, singing Dmitri's song. He wasn't executed on that day. They put him back in his cell, and he spent another 2 years there. So after 17 years of being imprisoned, he was eventually released and returned to his family, where he renewed his Bible study with his 2 sons that eventually blossomed into a church, proclaiming great joy to be found worthy to be persecuted for the cross of Jesus Christ. Hard for us to wrap our heads around. But I need you to understand, what does this have to do with Faith Promise? Everything. Everything. I don't know how many Dmitris there are in this world, but I would venture to guess that there are millions of them that aren't concerned about the quality of the building in which they meet, that aren't concerned about what other people think about them, or whether they may end up in prison with 4,000 other men for 15 or 17 years, but only with the privilege they have of being counted worthy to share the gospel of Jesus Christ. There are millions of Dmitris around this world. And you and I get to be a part of their ministry this morning. I'm going to ask Tony and Sharon if they would to come this morning. I'm going to give you a card this morning. I want each one of you to take one. And before you do, let me explain so that we're all on the same page Many of you know, you've done this before, all right? This card is made up of two parts, all right? You have a large part and a small one that is perforated. Okay? This big part is your reminder. Take that home with you, pray over it every single day. This part over here is my promise. My promise is, and how much? There are some who want to give one lump sum, just once, boom, for the year. All right? Some do it on a weekly basis. Some do it on a monthly basis. Whatever it is that God's challenging you to do, fill out this card. Take a moment and fill out this card. All right? And then I'm going to have Sharon and Tony pick them back up a little bit later, all right, in our time together. So everybody take one. And as you're doing that, all right, I'm going to show you, this isn't Dimitri, but it's about him.
My name is Dimitri. I was born a Russian man. And I was a factory worker until 1960. And I started teaching the Bible to my two little boys. That's when the journey began. Well, our house became a church, and the Sunday school grew. Had 150 before we knew it, but the KGB didn't want got around. 17 years they locked me up 1,000 miles away. This is my heart song, and I will stand and sing, for I am a son of the living King. So when the fight comes, I'll be rejoicing. Yeah, even when I suffer, I'll be singing. Ooh, Jesus is alive. Ooh, Jesus is alive. Despite 1,500 prisoners, criminal to the core, who'd laugh and curse and bang their cups and try to drown me out. Like clockwork every morning with the rising of the sun, I'd stand and raise my hands and sing my heart song up to God. You hear me, God? This is my heart song, and I will stand and sing, for I am a son of the living King. So when the fight comes, I'll be rejoicing. Yeah, even when I suffer, I'll be singing.
When you have completed your thing, just lift it up in the air if you would, and now come around and collect them.
Jesus is alive. Jesus is alive. Believers, stand for what you believe. Faint not in adversity. If you are cursed for Jesus' name, don't give up. No, don't give up.
And if you have a pen that doesn't work, raise your hand too,
Break me.
because there are a bunch of them.
Wouldn't give in. And as they came to drag me out for my execution, I heard a choir of angels, yeah, murderers and thieves. Those 1,500 criminals had risen up for me. They raised their hands and sang the song my father taught me. The sweetest sound I